No one went to CEO's paralyzed daughter's birthday until a black boy made her day and changed the whole situation a party by giving her a surprise gift. This boy became the hope for birthday girl, and all the rich guests got embarrassed. The mansion's garden looked like a dream straight out of a magazine, but the dream was hollow. Golden ribbons floated in the afternoon breeze, tied carefully along the wrought iron fence. Hundreds of balloons in shades of ivory and rose gold bobbed in the air, reflecting the fading light of the summer sun. Tables had been set out beneath pristine white canopy, each draped with embroidered linen, and stacked with plates of untouched pastries, cakes, and glistening fruit. The air smelled faintly of roses in the sprawling garden that stretched around the estate, mingling with the sugary scent of four-tiered birthday cake waiting beneath its glass dome. And yet, despite the perfection, there was something crushingly wrong. The place was empty. The folding chairs arranged neatly in rows were bare. The wide wooden stage with microphones sat untouched, waiting for laughter and music that never came. The DJ checked his phone in boredom, leaning lazily against his booth. Even the waiters, dressed in crisp white shirts and black aprons, whispered among themselves in the corners, eyes darting at the strange sight of a birthday party with no guests. And at the very center of it all sat Evelyn Carrington. She was 12 years old, paralyzed from the waist down since birth, her legs strapped gently into the chair she never left. The chair was custom-built, sleek, metallic, and fitted with soft pink cushion. Her auburn hair fell in loose curls over her shoulders, her dress of pale lavender that shimmered in the golden hour light. She should have looked like a princess in her palace. Her party a celebration of joy. Instead, her face was pale and tight, her eyes darting across the empty seats as though still hoping, praying, that someone might arrive late, that maybe the squeak of the gates would reveal the children she had once called friend. But the gates remained still. "Don't worry, sweetheart," her father murmured, adjusting the lapel of his designer suit. Richard Carrington, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar firm, towered beside her chair, his presence as commanding as the marble pillars of the mansion behind them. Sometimes people are just running late. He didn't believe his own word. Evelyn knew it. She could hear it in the way his deep voice trembled at the edges, the way his hand lingered too long on her shoulder, hiding his own shame. Her mother, Elena, a statuesque woman in a silver gown, hovered nearby, her smile brittle, her eyes sharp with anger at the world, at the whispers, at the cruelty that had led to this moment. But none of their reassurances could change the truth. No one had come. The invitations had gone out weeks ago, gold embossed cards delivered to the finest private schools in the city, each promising a day of joy, games, live music, and endless food. Everyone knew the Carrington name. Everyone knew Evelyn's party would be a spectacle. And yet, every parent had found a reason to decline. Some said their child was busy. Others were vague. But behind closed doors, whispers spread like wildfire. Why go? What's the point? Evelyn, the girl in the wheelchair, wasn't like them. She couldn't play soccer. She couldn't dance at the recital. She couldn't run through the garden with the other, to children. That difference had turned into something else. Mockery. Isolation. And so the seat stayed empty. Evelyn's eyes brimmed, though she fought against the tears with all her strength. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry. Not today. Not on her birthday. But the silence of the garden pressed into her chest like a stone. She remembered overhearing them. The other girls at school, giggling in corners when they thought she couldn't hear. She can't even blow out her candles without help. Imagine having to sit in a chair forever. Her dad's money can't make her normal. The words stuck like needles, and now, seeing the empty tables, she realized how much those whispers had shaped her reality. By the fountain, two waiters whispered as they stacked untouched plate. "Do you think anyone's still coming?" The older one shook his head. "No, this is it. Poor girl." Their voices carried, soft but not soft enough. Evelyn caught them. She turned her head sharply, staring at the marble lion spouting water, as though they might answer her unspoken question. Why me? She wanted to disappear into her chair, to fold into nothing. She wanted the balloons to float away and take her with them. But then, just as her father opened his mouth to say something hollow, something to distract her, a voice broke the stillness. "Excuse me." Heads turned. At the wrought iron gate stood a boy, about 13, tall for his age, with skin the color of polished mahogany and hair cropped close. He wore a plain white shirt, slightly wrinkled, and dark trousers that were just a little too short at the ankles. His sneakers had seen better days. In his hands, he held a small, wrapped box, crookedly taped, like he had done it himself. The guards hesitated. He wasn't on the list. He clearly wasn't from their world of wealth and glitter. But he stood there anyway, shoulders squared, eyes wide but unflinching. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice carried strangely in the air, strong but uncertain, like he wasn't sure if anyone would laugh. And laugh they nearly did. Some of the staff exchanged smirk. What was a boy like him doing here, at the Carrington mansion, with nothing but a poorly wrapped box? The DJ arched an eyebrow, muttering something under his breath. Even Richard's jaw tightened, suspicion flashing across his face. But before he could speak, Evelyn leaned forward. Her eyes locked on the boy, and for the first time all day, there was a spark, faint, fragile, but real. "Yes," she whispered, almost to herself. Then louder, "Yes, you can." Richard Carrington was not a man easily swayed. Every instinct screamed at him to say no, to send the boy away politely, to preserve the polished image of control. This wasn't how things were done. Guests came with invitations, with names worth mentioning in Forbes. Not like this. But Evelyn's eyes, shimmering with a hope he hadn't seen in years, stopped him. He sighed, signaling the guards. Let him in. The gates creaked open. The boy walked across the gravel path, clutching his crooked gift. His steps were steady, though he could feel every gaze drilling into his back. When he reached Evelyn, he paused. "Happy birthday," he said simply, holding out the package. Her hands trembled as she took it, tearing the paper slowly. Inside was a tiny wooden carving, a butterfly, wings spread wide, polished but uneven. Hand-carved. "Real. I made it," he said quickly, almost apologetic. "It's not fancy, but I thought maybe you'd like it." Evelyn's lips parted. She traced the wings with her fingers, her voice catching. "It's beautiful." And then, for the first time that day, she smiled. The staff stared. Elena covered her mouth, her eyes wet. Richard looked away, his jaw clenched, hiding something in his expression. Shame? Guilt? Because in that moment, it was clear. This boy, with nothing but a handmade butterfly, had given Evelyn more joy than all the millions Richard had spent on balloons, cakes, and gold-trimmed invitations. The boy shifted awkwardly. "I'm Jordan," he said finally. I live nearby. I saw the decoration, and I thought maybe you'd need a friend." Evelyn's throat tightened. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not as a charity case, not as a patient, just a friend. "Would you?" Jordan hesitated. "Would you like me to stay?" Evelyn looked at the empty chair, looked at her father, looked at the butterfly in her hand. "Yes," she said firmly. The silence broke, not with pity, not with whispers, but with the sound of Evelyn's laughter as Jordan began telling her about the silly way he carved the butterfly, how he kept messing up one wing and had to start over 3 times. His voice was warm, animated, full of life, and slowly, like the sun pushing through storm clouds, the atmosphere shifted. The DJ, unsure at first, began to play a gentle tune. One of the waiters, smiling softly, brought out plates of cake. The balloons no longer seemed heavy. They danced in the wind as if celebrating with Evelyn. For the first time, the party felt alive. Evelyn and Jordan talked and laughed. She asked him about his life. He told her about his little sister, about how he liked drawing superheroes, about how he didn't have much, but always tried to make something with his hand. And all the while, Richard Carrington watched from the shadows of the canopy, his mind churning. He had never seen his daughter so animated, so free. But with that revelation came a gnawing, unsettling truth. As the sun dipped lower, painting the garden in amber light, Richard's phone buzzed. A message. He glanced at it, and his face hardened. It was from a board member of his company. Saw the photos. "Why is there a boy at the party?" "Careful, Richard. Appearances matter." Richard's grip tightened on the phone until his knuckles turned white, because he suddenly realized the world that had abandoned his daughter might not take kindly to the boy who had dared to show up when no one else would. And yet, as he looked back at Evelyn, laughing, holding her butterfly, her eyes brighter than he had ever seen them, Richard knew one thing. This was only the beginning. The party was long over. The balloons had deflated, the cake half-eaten, and the sea of empty chairs in the decorated ballroom looked like a cruel reminder of Evelyn's lonely birthday. Only one thing kept the night from being a disaster: Jordan. Evelyn still had that rare, glowing smile on her face as her father, Richard Halden, escorted her back into the mansion's great hall. She leaned on her wheelchair's armrest, looking more alive than Richard had seen her in years. But Richard's eyes weren't on his daughter. They were on the boy who stood quietly near the door, unsure if he was allowed to stay or if he should run before the weight of the mansion swallowed him whole. Richard's voice broke the silence. "Jordan, was it?" The boy straightened, his small hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "Yes, sir." Richard studied him the way he studied business rivals across polished oak boardroom tables. Jordan didn't flinch. "You stayed longer than the staff," Richard said. "Why?" Jordan glanced at Evelyn. Her eyes pleaded with him not to crumble under her father's sharp tone. He swallowed hard. "Because she was alone," Jordan answered softly. "And no one deserves that on their birthday." Evelyn clapped her hands together. "Daddy, can he come again?" "Please." Richard didn't reply. His gaze lingered on Jordan, this boy from nowhere nowhere who had done what all of Evelyn's doctor, therapists, and expensive companions couldn't. He had given his daughter a moment of joy. But Richard's mind was already calculating risk. A CEO's daughter befriending the son of a janitor? A boy who would never belong in the gilded circles Richard's family inhabited? The headlines alone could be disastrous. Still, the laughter, Evelyn's laughter, echoed in his mind, and it cut deeper than any headline. The following week, Evelyn wouldn't stop talking about Jordan. At breakfast, she refused to eat until her father promised she could invite him again. In the gardens, she sat for hours sketching with one hand and asking the staff if they thought Jordan liked animals or chess or reading. Richard had never seen her so animated. It both warmed and terrified him. By Friday, he gave in. Fine. Invite him, he told her. One afternoon, supervised, Evelyn squealed like a child half her age. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and sent Jordan a message through the mansion staff line. When Jordan arrived that Saturday, wearing his cleanest polo shirt and clutching a second-hand book as a gift, Evelyn nearly leapt from her wheelchair with excitement. The two spent the afternoon chasing bubbles in the garden fountain, making up silly stories about the stone lions and sharing secrets. Jordan confessed he sometimes hated being the janitor's kid. Evelyn admitted she hated always being treated as the CEO's fragile daughter. By sunset, they were both breathless from laughing. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt normal, and Jordan felt seen. But not everyone was pleased. The next Monday, Richard entered the boardroom for the weekly executive meeting. The room was sleek, glass-walled, with a dozen men in suits waiting. One of them, a stocky man named Grant Wallace, smirked. "Richard, we've been hearing interesting stories about your daughter's new friend." Richard's jaw tightened. And Grant continued, "Some of our investors are worried. A boy like that, staff son, isn't he? Mingling with Evelyn. The press could twist it into a circus. It might not reflect well on Halden Industries." The others nodded in murmured agreement. Richard said nothing. His mind flickered to Evelyn's radiant smile when Jordan pushed her wheelchair across the garden path. Could the board understand that kind of priceless joy? No, they measured everything in dollars and perception. Still, the pressure was real. Richard knew one misstep could cost millions. That evening, as twilight bathed the mansion's glass windows in orange, Richard found Evelyn on the terrace with Jordan. They were playing chess, her pale hands hovering uncertainly over pieces, while Jordan explained each move with gentle patience. Richard cleared his throat. "Evelyn, inside. Now." She frowned. "Why? We're in the middle of a game." "Now," he repeated. Jordan stood up quickly. "Mr. Halden, if I've done something wrong." "You've done enough," Richard snapped. His voice cracked like a whip in the quiet garden. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Daddy, don't talk to him like that." Richard ignored her. He turned to Jordan. "You will not return here. This friendship is over." The boy's shoulders sagged. But before he could leave, Evelyn wheeled herself forward, her face red with fury. "No!" she shouted. "You don't get to decide this for me." Richard froze. Evelyn had never raised her voice to him before. Tears streamed down her face. "All my life you protected me like I'm some fragile thing. But you weren't protecting me. You were trapping me. Jordan is the first person who sees me, not my chair. And you want to take that away because of your reputation?" Her words hit harder than any boardroom attack. Richard felt the weight of his empire pressing down on him, demanding he crush this friendship. But for the first time, he wasn't sure if the empire was worth it. That night, Richard sat alone in his study. The glow of the fireplace painted him in gold, but he felt cold inside. On his desk lay 2 letters, one from the board, warning of unfavorable press, one from Evelyn, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Daddy, please don't take away the only friend I've ever had." His heart warred with his mind. He remembered the sound of Evelyn's laughter in the garden, how her eyes lit up when Jordan arrived. That sound was rarer than any profit margin. By dawn, Richard made his decision. A week later, the mansion garden was filled with people, not just family, but staff, friends, even a few skeptical board members Richard had personally invited. It was Evelyn's second birthday, as she called it, because the first one didn't count. She sat in her chair at the head of a long table, beaming. Beside her was Jordan, holding a tray of cupcakes they'd baked together. When the board members whispered, Richard silenced them with a glare. Then he stood, raising his glass. "I built my company on strength," he said. "But strength means nothing if we cannot also have compassion. Today, I want to thank the boy who reminded me of that, and who reminded my daughter how to laugh again. Jordan, you're always welcome in this home." The guests clapped politely, but Evelyn's clap was thunderous. She leaned over and whispered to Jordan, "See? I told you he'd come around." Jordan grinned, shy but proud, and Richard for the first time in years, felt not like a CEO balancing an empire, but like a father who had finally done the right thing. The evening ended with Evelyn and Jordan blowing bubbles in the garden fountain, the sparkling orbs drifting into the summer sky, and Richard, watching from the terrace, realized that sometimes the bravest business decision wasn't about money. It was about choosing love over fear. Like, share, comment, and subscribe for awesome and more engaging videos.